Right now at 6, what caused a door plug to blow out of a plane over Portland?
An accident like this only happens when there are multiple system failures.
The NTSB gives the final word and calls for change.
Plus, Oregon sees its first measles case of the year. The two busy public places people may have been exposed. Then,
those caught the nearby brush, and because it was the red flag conditions, they spread.
Headed to court, why some people who lost their homes in the Rowena fire are putting the blame on one company. And later,
it made sense, knowing what I think they want to accomplish this summer.
new reaction to a reported big Blazers trade on tonight, the eve of the NBA draft. First at 6, a ceasefire between Israel and Iran appears to be holding, while a new U.S. intelligence assessment indicates American strikes on Iranian nuclear sites may not have been as effective as first thought. Thanks for joining us. I'm David Molko.
And I'm Christine Pitawanich. That ceasefire started off a bit shaky, with Israel accusing Iran of firing missiles into its airspace and Iran denying it. But an Israeli military official said they intercepted 2 Iranian missiles. Then, as President Trump left the White House this afternoon for the NATO summit in the Netherlands, he told reporters that, in his view, both sides had violated the agreement.
We basically have 2 countries that have been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what they're doing.
Okay, that was fairly pointed. Meanwhile, the new U.S. intelligence assessment found Iran's nuclear program was only set back a few months by the American attack on its nuclear sites rather than completely obliterated, as President Trump has indicated. This is according to the Associated Press. The White House strongly pushing back on that report, calling it, quote, flat out wrong.
Closer to home, the U.S. Department of Homeland Security issued a national terrorism bulletin warning that what it calls a heightened threat environment here in the U.S. due to the ongoing conflict in the Middle East.
Libby Dowsett's live in downtown Portland. Libby, we certainly do not want to be alarmist about this, so walk us through what it means.
It essentially means that DHS wants people to be very aware of their surroundings and what they're doing online. Now, according to this bulletin, it says pro-Iranian cyber actors and extremist sympathizers could conduct cyber attacks and spread violent rhetoric. The community security director, who oversees safety for the Jewish Federation of Greater Portland, is retired from the FBI. She says it's always a good idea to follow best practices.
We focus a lot on physical security. It's where people see the most security improvements in their spaces, and cyber needs to be as important to all of these organizations as well.
Now, if you think you're a victim of hacking or cybersecurity threats, all you have to do is report it to CISA, and that stands for Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, and that's CISA.gov. You just communicate what happened, what you received, and they will notify federal authorities. Now back to you.
Libby Dowsett reporting live from downtown Portland. Thank you, Libby. To a health alert now, with the first confirmed measles case of the year in Oregon, involving someone who just returned from an international trip.
Catherine Cook's in the newsroom. So, Catherine, what do we know about the where and when here?
Well, David, there are a few potential exposure points that concern health officials the most. First, the flight the person shared with several people. They were on a United Airlines flight to Portland from O'Hare International in Chicago. It landed at PDX on Tuesday, June 17th around 6:30 p.m. Health officials say the person was in the Portland airport, including the baggage claim area, for about 2 hours. They also say the person with the measles went to the Safeway grocery store on A Avenue in Lake Oswego. They were there on Sunday, June 22nd, between 11:30 a.m. and 3 p.m.
Measles is perhaps the most highly contagious disease that we know of. It's spread by the airborne route. Just breathing the air that someone else has coughed into who had measles is sufficient to transmit the infection.
Doctors say if you have the measles, symptoms can start showing up within a week or more of exposure. They typically start with a fever, cough, runny nose, and red eyes. Then a rash usually follows. It's important that you call ahead to the doctor and not just show up to limit exposure to others. Health officials stress that the best way to protect against getting infected is to get the measles, mumps, and rubella vaccine. Back to you.
Catherine Cook, appreciate the update there.
In your headlines, the man accused of shooting at Milwaukee police during a chase last Friday appeared in court today. The judge agreed to hold a hearing that could keep him in jail until the case is finished. The man, who legally goes by the name Looney Tune, was arrested in Sandy yesterday. It all started Friday morning when officers tried to pull him over. They say he hit a patrol car, fired shots at officers, then ditched his car at the Eastmoreland Golf Course. Tune's next hearing will be Friday.
To Central Washington now, where after 25 days of searching, Travis Decker, suspected of killing his 3 young daughters, is still out there. Kittitas County deputies say there is no solid evidence Decker is alive, and they're now putting some resources toward finding out if he died in the wilderness. They are still, by the way, asking for leads and tips from the public.
And unemployment in the Portland metro area more or less held steady during the month of May. The state employment department reports it rose to 4.5%. That is up just 0.1% from April. That's lower than the statewide rate, which is 4.8%, but also higher than the national average. Locally, the steepest declines were in construction, while the biggest job gains were in leisure and hospitality. Joe?
Well, Christine, we're going to be looking at some changes moving into tomorrow. But first, I want to talk about some of that wildfire smoke you may have noticed over the last 24 hours, still continuing to filter in from the British Columbia area. Brings in chances of some cooler and cloudy conditions for tomorrow, looking to Wednesday. We're also looking at some smoke and haze, and a couple of upper level lows will be moving on shore, bringing a slight chance for some spotty drizzle, maybe a spotty shower or two heading into tomorrow, and a better chance on Thursday. But looking ahead, we get nicer later in this week, and especially into the weekend with warmer temperatures. Right now, mostly cloudy skies. You can kind of make out some of that smoke and haze as we look south from our waterfront camera. Temperatures right now in the upper 70s, low 80s throughout much of the metro area. And as we put this into motion, you can kind of see just how thick some of that smoke and haze will be. It's basically concentrated to the upper levels of the atmosphere, but still, we're going to notice it here on the rest of your Tuesday night. Air quality right now is the good to moderate category, especially down in Salem. You're starting to see a little hit to the air quality. It's a little more thicker down there. But coming up by detailed forecast, I'll let you know just how warm things will get over the next few days.
Yeah, smoke, haze, and sunshine, definitely summer. Thanks, Joe.
Frankly, it's nothing short of a miracle that no one died or sustained serious physical injuries.
Well, it turns out it was not a single person or a single mistake that led to the door plug blowout on board an Alaska flight over Portland last year. Federal transportation investigators say the near disaster was the result of systemic failures from the assembly line to the FAA.
I remember that Friday night so well. Tim Gordon takes a closer look at the cause and the new safety recommendations laid out today.
On January 5th, 2024, at about 5:13 p.m. Pacific Standard Time,
the NTSB laid out the facts about Alaska Airlines Flight 1282, starting with heroism for those who got the plane down safely after a door plug blew out after taking off from Portland with 164 passengers on board.
I firmly believe there's one reason Flight 1282 averted catastrophe, and one reason only: the crew.
NTSB Chair Jennifer Homendy shared what it was like on the flight deck that January evening when the cabin lost pressure.
To quote the captain, it was an explosive experience. The first officer said it was chaos.
Chaos at roughly 15,000 feet. The cabin crew dealing with a gaping hole in the side of the plane, the pilots working to descend and land safely.
And yet the crew shouldn't have had to be heroes, because this accident never should have happened.
The board spoke with NTSB investigators about why the door plug blew out, confirming it was 4 missing bolts that allowed the door plug to slowly slide up.
And what was happening is it was gradually moving up, and eventually it wouldn't hold it any further. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yeah, we saw the evidence of that in the materials lab exam and those seal marks.
There is a fix coming by 2026 to add an additional fastener and other improvements to the door plugs. Throughout the hearing, the NTSB pointed to several problems at Boeing, from a loss of veteran workers to poor training for new ones, ineffective management, a rush to produce more planes on the assembly line.
An accident like this does not happen because of an individual or even a group of individuals. Aviation is much more resilient than that. An accident like this only happens when there are multiple system failures.
And that includes the systems of the FAA, charged with making sure aircraft are built to safely carry their valuable payloads of people.
They really need to look at how they've conducted oversight in the past, why their oversight didn't pick up on deficiencies, and how to improve that in the future.
Tim Gordon, KGW News.
After the hearing, Boeing put out a statement saying, quote, "We at Boeing regret this accident and continue to work on strengthening safety and quality across our operations. We will review the final report and recommendations as we continue to implement improvements."
In Salem, some lawmakers are hoping to change the state's kicker rebate law, the proverbial third rail, so to speak, in Oregon, and funnel money to public education. For years, school administrators, teachers, and parents have been trying to get more state funding. Oregon students have long lagged behind in math and reading scores. And parents say the state has underfunded school systems for decades. Democrat State Representative Mark Gamba says his bill would help boost up the most vulnerable Oregonians.
A big chunk of what we return every year is to the wealthiest Oregonians, people who don't actually need it.
Pollsters say any changes to the kicker will be politically unfavorable, though they add that if changes are made, well, the best time to do it is now, with key elections more than a year out.